Well, you knew this game was coming eventually, and sure enough, the day has finally come where we get to take a look at this one for real. Hey guys, this is Bill once again with the Nintendo Super Power Club Challenge channel. Today, we are finally taking a look at Final Fantasy III, also known as Final Fantasy VI on the Super NES, and this is card number 143 in the collection. So Final Fantasy 3/6, I think most people know the story as to why it was called 3 instead of 6, and I'm not going to go into all of the gory details because it's been talked about ad nauseum, but we're going to call it 6 from this point forward. As I said, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and it's one of the first RPGs that I ever played, to be quite honest. It has quite a bit of nostalgic value. It holds up very well to this day in terms of traditional turn-based RPGs. I come back and play it quite frequently. The story is great, the graphics are great for the time, the soundtrack is absolutely amazing, and still one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in a complete video game. And I can't wait to get the tackle on this one. So many good things to say, I don't know where you can go wrong playing a game like this. So let's just go ahead, jump into it, and see what we're going to be doing over the course of this challenge. Alright, I know we've done some long challenges in the past, but they all pale in comparison to what we're about to witness here today. Pro Level Challenge states, can you pass the following area without being defeated? On Pro Level, that would be the entire game. So, for anyone who's ever played this game and defeated it, you know very well that this challenge is not going to be completed in 5, 15, 20, even 30 minutes. So, this is going to be a marathon. I think we all understand that. Now, in the past, I have stated that I would like to do a live stream of this game. However, as I've actually sat back and considered exactly what goes into that, having people sit back for 8, 10, 12 hours, however long it takes to watch that go through to completion, it's probably not very feasible, and as much as I would like to do it, I have a real life I have to adhere to, and I'm sure many other people do too. So, after giving it some thought, I've decided to break this into smaller chunks, because technically you can save the game as much as you want, as long as you don't die in the process. So, we're going to be breaking it into smaller 30-minute chunks. That's what I've decided to do, and I think it's going to work out fairly well here. So we're going to see the first 30 minutes of the game, and every subsequent video I post will be attached onto the same game save here. Alright, get ready to sit back, relax on this long magical journey through Final Fantasy VI, one of my all-time favorite games. Here we go. Alright, we are off and running with the prologue to one of my all-time favorite games. So just a quick heads up here, all of the narration that you are about to hear in this video and all of really any video that I do is completely ad-libbed. I don't use any scripts, because really for a game this long, 10 to 12 hours possibly, there's really no way that you could possibly script all of this unless you were extremely meticulous and tedious, and although I do a pretty good job for the most part, I don't want to put that much effort into scripting it. I think it's a lot more passionate and real when you have it just come roll right off the tongue here. So I want to kind of start off with something that some people already know, but for the ones that don't and aren't familiar with this game, why is the game actually Final Fantasy VI and not Final Fantasy III? Well, the initial Final Fantasy I came out in both Japan and the United States. However, Final Fantasy II and III did not come out in the US. So when the fourth game came out, obviously it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to call it Final Fantasy IV, so instead they call it 2 to make up for the gap. Now, same deal, Final Fantasy V did not come out in the United States either, but this game, Final Fantasy VI, obviously did come out. And again, because 5 wasn't there along with 2 and 3, it wouldn't have made sense to call it 6, so here, now we're at Final Fantasy III, which leads to a little conundrum. And then obviously Final Fantasy VII comes out in both Japan and the US. It's called what it actually is, and that's where the big conundrum confusion begins and starts and ends, because they're just calling it 7 at that point. So anyway, now that we know what the game is actually called, there's really no reason to call it 3 anymore. So, as I said, from this point forward, I'm calling it 6. Okay, now back to the actual game here. So we got a little bit of a story-based game point at this right now, and we see the main protagonist, this girl in green hair, in a mech warrior. Looks like an overhead view of Mech Warrior 2, possibly. Highly doubt it. So basically, if you were reading the story, we're going to be moving into a town called Narshe, and we're going to be trying to retrieve something called an Esper while working for the evil Empire. I'm not going to go ahead and skip this cutscene just because it drags the video down, and I know action's very important for games like this, so we're going to skip as much story as we possibly can and go right ahead into the action. So we're about to get our first fight right about here, and again, I know many people know how the action system works, but quick overview. So here we go. This is traditional fighting that you'll see in a turn-based RPG. You pick your action, you go for it, and hopefully you deal enough damage to kill the enemies here. And as you can see, the main girl that we use has many more attack options than, what have we got, Vix and Wedge here. So that's kind of interesting. And for good reason, you'll learn why later in the story. So we don't know her name yet, but that will be coming. Like most other RPGs, you earn experience for defeating enemies or doing certain tasks, and the more experience you earn, you can level yourself up and become stronger, deal more damage with both physical attack power and later on magic. So basically, the whole premise here is that we're moving through the town of Narshe. We're going to be pretty much unopposed, and we will get right to the Esper, and that should be our first main battle here. So we're going to kind of demonstrate some of the main attack options that we have at our disposal here, and you kind of get to see what we got to work with right now. As you can see, we have under 100 HP for all of our characters right now, which is extremely low, because when you get towards the end of this game, it's obviously very possible to max out the health at 9999. Kind of comical when you see how low the health is when you first start out in this game. So anyway, a lot of slow stuff. Right now we're using the Confuser, which basically, confuses people, and it makes people attack themselves. Now, we could let them attack themselves, but we want to get through this as quick as we can, so we're just going to go ahead and annihilate everything in our path. And really, that's all there is to see right now, so we're just going to move on, unopposed, into the Esper fight. So we're basically moving to the back end of Narshe. We're going to have a couple more battles here. This next one here, we're getting pinched in from both sides. It's going to demonstrate what it's like to fight from in between. Anytime you get into a situation like this is obviously not good, because damage is essentially doubled if I am not mistaken, I recall here. And again, early part of the game, not that big of a deal. If you ever do get low on health, the good thing is this is a very easy section of the game. It's kind of dummy proof, almost impossible to lose. You have heal force beams built into all of your characters, so you don't need to worry about using items for tonics, potions, cure spells. It's basically a get out of jail free button with the heal beam if you start getting low on health. And you might start getting there toward the Esper fight, but there's really no reason to worry about dying with these basic generic enemies here. So that's really all this is meant to demonstrate. We're going to keep on moving through these battles. I think we got a couple more before we go into the cave, which will house the Esper, and then things will start to get a little bit more interesting. So we're going to keep moving on toward the back of Narshe, which is right about here. And then we'll be moving into the cave. I think we have maybe one more fight to worry about, and then we'll get into the cave and the mines. So here comes the next one. The enemies are starting to get a little bit stronger. Actually, no, not well. What do we got here? We got the Mammoth. So they're a little bit tougher to take down, but still, given the arsenal that we have, this is pretty simplistic. So keep using the same old stuff if you want. Of course, anytime you have an attack that hits everybody like this Bioblast here, it's probably to your advantage to take advantage of it, for lack of a better word. And that's what we're going to do here. So we're just going to keep on moving on to the end of Narshe and eventually into the cave. So we're now officially into the cave right about here. Tell us there's no backing out now. We got to keep on moving. And as we move into the cave, you're going to see there is a blinking blue light off to the left. It's going to be a save point, and you'll see it for like a quarter of a second right there. And that's what we're going to be using throughout the game to ensure that we can save our progress and without dying, hopefully. And right here we got a few were-rats we're going to be taking out. They start getting a little bit tougher, but again, nothing we can't handle at this point. Interesting thing with some of these rats is that they are immune to poison, and if you try to use a poison spell on them, it'll actually help them gain health. Now this is an interesting spell, the X-Fur. It will actually take them to another dimension, essentially outright killing them. And later on in the game, when we get access to a certain spell that allows us to do the same thing, we will be taking advantage of that, because you can actually outright kill a lot of these bosses instantaneously with the X-First spell in combination of something else. So we're going to pass the save point. We don't really need it at this point in the game. It's just really there to show you what a save point is. We're going to continue on into here, and right about now we have the Esper fight, which is our very first boss we're going to be coming into contact with. And the cutscene is going to start right about here. The guard's going to attempt to stop us futilely, and he's going to fail terribly. Alright, so our first boss right about here, this is a ugly looking hard-shelled snail called Wilkes. And in case you don't feel like reading the text dialogue down there, basically we need to only attack him when his head is out. If he tucks back into his shell and we hit the shell, he's going to store the energy and zap it right back into us. So that's the whole premise of this. Basically we have to watch our active time battle bar here and obviously utilize the attacks when we can. And if the shell's out, clearly don't hit unless you like being hit. Now if you do make a mistake and you hit the shell by accident, it is possible to heal yourself. The counterattack will not outright kill you, thankfully. But of course, you don't want to take any chances. This is kind of getting you used to the idea of timing attacks and things like that. So usually in this first wave, I'd say about 4 attacks is good. Then you want to hold back and wait for them to heal. This is a good time right now to just focus on healing your folks if you need to. So right about here, we did an attack by accident. And you're going to see the Megavolt's going to come out, and bam, it's going to hit every single player here for a good chunk of damage, and thankfully it didn't kill us, so like I said, this is a good time to heal up. Now you see our little protagonist up there with the green hair. She is currently blinking white. That means she's been affected with slow, which basically slows her battle actions, and unfortunately our best player got slowed down, which is never a good thing. So we are going to have to slug on through this, again, for lack of a better word. But it's not a big deal. This boss is pretty simple. As long as you hit just the head, and only the head, you got nothing to worry about. There's really no reason why you should be dying here, unless you're mercilessly attacking non-stop and not really caring about counter damage, in which case you get everything you got coming to you. So right about here, same old stuff. We're just waiting for the shell to go away, waiting for the head to come back out, and then we will take him down. So this was a very nice introduction to the game right here, and as we get into the second part, the enemies once again will start to get a little bit tougher, but that's really all I really have to say right now. It gets a lot more interesting once we get into that section, and eventually we will be leaving Narshe and we get out into the open world map where it really becomes interesting and you have free reign to really do almost anything you want within reason. So I think this should just about take care of Wilkes right about here. There we go. Again, I'm ad-libbing everything, so I don't really remember everything that happened during the playthrough, and I got kind of lucky with that statement there. Alright, so we take down Wilkes. He's going to give us a good bit of, well, nothing actually. It just gives us a potion. Now, interestingly enough, if you are very patient and you manage to take down the shell actually has about 50,000 hit points. I kid you not, 50,000 hit points. If you are patient enough to take down the shell, you will get, if I'm not mistaken, 1 mega elixir, which is kind of ridiculous for this point in the game, but again, if you got nothing else to do, better with your time, that's probably the Uber Ultra Pro challenge. Defeat Wilkes' shell. I've never done it myself, so I can't say I've ever completed it, but I'm sure there are some people out there who've done it without cheating. Alright, here we are, we're up to the Esper, which does not have a name yet. It actually does have a name later on, we will learn it. It's actually one of the more powerful Espers out there. And right about here, both of our compadres, Vix and Wedge, have been annihilated and sent to the X zone, so they're gone forever, as far as I know anyway. And we have a little electrical interaction here, and Terra takes quite a bit of damage. We assume she gets knocked out. And here we go. We're coming to in a bed. And right about here, we're going to figure out exactly who we are and where we came from. She doesn't know where we're at. Clearly something was wrong. And we see that there was a crown on her head of some sort. It was actually a slave crown that held control over her. So she was not acting on her own. And clearly she's got some amnesia here. We're going to figure out more about her, all about her, in just a few seconds here, including her name and a lot more about this story. So in case I haven't already given the secret away, her name is Terra. And as I said, she is one of the main good players in this game. We're going to be spending a lot of time with her. She's also one of the more versatile and more powerful players in this game. Very good attack stat, very, very high magic power, so you can use her for just about anything you want here. So now we know who she is, and we can see that we have a few more soldiers of the Empire coming back to try to retrieve her and bring her back. Clearly, now that we know who she is, we do not want to go back that route. We're going to have to try to escape, but what do? Clearly, we can't go out the front door. So, it looks like there was a door in the back room, so I guess that's where we're going to be going here. Before we go that way, something I want to point out. We're going to head over this way and take a look at that grandfather clock. Take a little closer peek at it. Ooh, we got an elixir. That's kind of critical. Keep that in mind, because anytime you run across a grandfather clock in this game, you most likely will have the opportunity to pull an elixir out of the front of the clock. And those are very helpful because elixirs will restore full HP and magic to one individual player. Those are critical and they're priceless, and you want to hold on to those at all costs. If you can find an opportunity to get one or craft one, I would take advantage of it. Alright, so it looks like we're escaping out the back door. Oh dang, the guards found us. We're just going to keep on moving. Too late to go back now. And we're going to start moving through the cave here, and we are by ourselves. We're going to have to start fighting some tougher enemies here, and you can see Terra does have some decent attack power. At this point, most of these enemies should be one-shots, so it's nothing that we can't handle right now. We also do have access to some magic spells, which we can take a look at a little bit later. She does have a cure spell. And of course, we do have some magical items that we can take advantage of if we don't want to use our magic spells. I believe we have a tonic and maybe a potion or two. So those are useful. Now, we could save here if we wanted to, but again, there's really no point in doing that because this is a pretty simple section of the game, so I'm not worried about saving. We are going to go ahead and open up some of these chests. Now, it is worth pointing out that if you get into the later half of this game and those particular chests have not been opened, that there will be stronger items available later on in the game, although it's not really necessary because we're going to have so much gold we won't know what to do with it, and the items that we will have, or should have by that point, I believe will outdo the weapons and items that are in those chests in the second half of the game. So, choice is yours. You can choose to get the items now or later, but again, it's not that big of a deal. So we're going to keep on moving on. We've got a couple more optional chests here. I'm just going to choose to go ahead and open them up. So a sleeping bag is going to allow you the ability to save on the overworld or a save point and renew the health and magic of one individual character, versus a tent, which will do that for every single party member. So tents are obviously more important than sleeping bags, but if you don't have a tent, at least you got the option to save and help at least one person. So we're continuing on. We got the guy called the Repo Man who throws wrenches at us. Very cute. Not a whole lot else to speak about here until we get to the back of this cave, and then things will start to pick up a little bit. And we're actually approaching the back of the cave right now, so there's the next place we're going to go. And who do we got? Ooh, the guards have managed to track us down. We're just going to be backed into a corner. And whoops. Fell through the floor, smacked our head pretty hard. And wouldn't you know it, it looks like we're about to pass out. Alright, and it looks like we're going to come to in what appears to be a dream or a flashback sequence, and we have this character in the back named Kefka, who, although we never met him before, he already appears to have a very evil aura or presence about him. Looks like he put something on top of what appears to be Terra's head, and we're assuming it was that slave crown that was revealed a little bit earlier. Kefka's laughing because he now has complete control over Terra here. And this is basically the genesis of why Terra was presumed to be evil here. And here we go. She's now taking out a bunch of soldiers in a background that is set ablaze on fire. So we're assuming that what happened is they went into this town, set it ablaze, and now they're killing all of the people trying to defend it. And that's what we've got with Kefka laughing in the foreground here. Alright, so we head back to the Imperial capital, and now we've got Kefka along with Terra in the background and a few other characters who we have not been introduced to yet. Here's a man named Gastal, who will later be revealed as the Emperor, talking about how he is going to take control of everything, and then everybody comes forward to basically agree with him. So there we are. We have Kefka along with two other characters we will come to know a little bit later in the game here, and Terra in the background just watching on by her mech warrior. And as we can see, Terra is still laying unconscious. She took a pretty bad fall there. Cut back to the old man, and here's another character we have not yet been introduced. I've got a lot of characters in this game so far. And we are going to come to find out that this is a man who is a treasure hunter. He goes by the name of Locke, appropriately named, I would say. He likes to steal, open treasures, open the locks, haha, so there you go. I think it's a good name to go with. Got a pretty interesting sense of humor. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to be taking control of Locke. He's going to go into the cave and essentially rescue Terra from what happened here. So he's going to go into that cave and defend Terra from all of the bad guys here. And then we're hoping bring her back to safety. And we'll see what happens from that point on. So here, if you're bothering to read the story, there is a resistance group against the Emperor or the Empire called the Returners. So very much has a feel to Star Wars, if you can believe that. Obviously with much less technology than you would see in a sci-fi movie like that. But it's the same kind of premise. You have the uprising resistance group going against the Empire. Same kind of deal here. So Locke comes into the cave, drops down the big hole, sees that Terra's unconscious, and what's going to happen here? He looks ahead. Here comes a big guard. Ooh, and here comes the backup. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 groups of enemies we're going to have to take down here in order to defend Terra. And Koopa, who's this? Oh, we got a couple different friendly types we have not been introduced to yet. And we find out they are now Moogles. And one of the Moogles in particular, named Mog, will be very beneficial and essential to us later in the game. And you get a chance to use them right now. You got some interesting attack choices here. You'll get to see how they work. But basically the way this section works is you get to split into 3 different groups, and you can choose to either go, strategic and divide your 3 party members into sections that will cut off the paths so that Terra certainly doesn't get, attacked and killed. Or you could just go straight on down to the enemy and hope to take out the commanding general before any of them get up there. It really depends on your playstyle. I think here we're just going to go full on attack, go down there. Now you see here we got 4 different party members here. You have Locke and then 3 different Moogles here. Koopep, Koopop, Koomama, none of which are memorable. They're just different Moogle name types here. So basically we're taking the strongest party, in my opinion, down there. Now it's going to be very critical and crucial. You got to watch the health of these Moogles here because it's not very high, and it is possible that some of them will probably die on the way down to the boss here. And the problem is that Locke doesn't have any heal spells. So you're going to have to rely on your inventory of items, tonics, and potions in order to keep them alive. Now, right around here, we pretty much note that one party's probably not going to get the job done. Giving it a second thought, we're going to try to take out as many as we can here, and then eventually we will switch parties and have one of the other Moogle party members fight a couple of these enemies here. And that Blizzard spell is not fun. Watch how much health it takes away here. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but for this stage in the game with very low health totals, that is pretty bad. So we've gotten through 2 or 3 enemy groupings here. Got a few more to go. And let's see what we got left. Yeah, we've only got 3 tonics, 2 potions, and unfortunately at this point in the game there are no stores that I know of where you can go to buy more, health spells or health recovery items, so you're kind of stuck with what you got. The only real way to get past this is, you could do some power leveling if you want to, although I don't really feel that it's necessary for this stage in the game. But you could have some tricky battles if you're not careful and you don't watch yourself here. So, ooh, look at this. Basically, 2 or 3 of those Moogles are already in danger here, and Locke is not faring that much better. So, we've only got 1 or 2 more enemy groupings to get past, thankfully, here. And if you have any kind of health, any kind of items to use, this is probably a good time, or switch between different Moogle types. I think that's what we're going to do here. Yep, we're going to block off the remaining 2, just in case. Now, we have Mog here, who is basically the Moogle captain, the strongest of all the Moogles. He also has the strongest attack types, and he also has a secondary attack type called Dance. Basically, whatever environment you are found to be in, the first time you battle in that environment, like here is a cave, you learn a specific dance, as it's called. It's a certain attack type, and as long as the enemy is not resistant to that specific attack type, it will do massive, massive damage to them. So it's kind of cool how you can customize your attack variants here. It can be physical, magic, a special attack based upon that character type. So dancing is for them. Now, these other generic Moogles here don't have the dance ability, so just kind of keep that in mind. They're really just good for attacking, support, and nothing else. And I think that's going to do it for all of the enemy types here. So we're going to go on down with our strongest party. And honestly, that's probably not a smart idea to take Locke down there if you look at their health totals. So you have an option to build them up with health, which is what we're going to do. Honestly, it probably would have been smarter to go the other way, but the die's been cast. We've made our choice, and here we go down to the boss. Here we go. We got a Lobo or two, if I remember, and then we got the Marshal. Now, here's the problem with this. The Marshal immediately cast a spell called Net, which doesn't seem that bad. It just made him blink pink, right? Well, the problem with that spell is it inflicts a status ailment called Stop. And Stop basically does what it sounds like. It prevents you from taking any actions. And right there, he just made a massive hit against Locke for 97 damage. Stop is bad. I mean, if you have any kind of antidotes or cures or heal spells, rather, you can use them to take him out of the ailment. Unfortunately, we don't for this point in the game, so it's going to make this battle much, much more tricky. It would have been nice if he would have hit one of the other Moogles or enemies other than Locke, but hey, it is what it is. It makes this more entertaining. And we've got one Moogle down. We've got 3 other party members still up and attacking. And you can make that 2 party members up and attacking. We're in a critical situation right now, but thankfully we pulled this off. We're going to get through. We're going to get a potion and tonic, thank the Lord. We got a lot of gold, lots of good stuff to spend for when we actually do have items and weapon shops. So we get out of there scathed heavily, but we do get out of there. Locke's going to return. He's going to retrieve Terra. And I'm looking to get the heck out of here. Get out of this cave and go somewhere else. And that's exactly where we're going. Head into the exit of this cave. And before we get out of there, we're going to see that Terra is, I believe, going to come to and awaken. Go ahead and whack that switch right there and check this out. Boom, it's going to open an exit that'll get us out of this cave and over to the front side of Narshe. So basically, we've made our way out of Narshe without going out the front door and attacking all of the onslaught of guards that we would have faced right there. Although, honestly, it didn't really matter because we fought the guards anyway. So basically here, Locke is learning that Terra has amnesia, and there's not a whole lot we can do right now. Terra just kind of has to fend for herself and remember who she is and was. And she'll make some interesting choices along the way here. So the good news is Terra and Locke will now get to pair up and work together, which is good because eventually these enemy types are going to get trickier and tougher. So we're just going to head on here, and this is the front side of Narshe. Now you can try to go back up to the front, but obviously doing that's pointless because the town of Narshe is infested with enemies. So we're going to take a pit stop in here into the School of Knowledge, or Classroom of Knowledge as I call it. Now there's a few things you can do here. All of these sages and old wise men that you see have lots of knowledge and wisdom that you can garner before heading out into the open world. And if you're new to the game, I highly suggest that you take all the advice that you can, learn what you can before you head out there. Even if you are a new player to the game, you could probably head out there and do fairly well until the midway point to later points in the game when status ailments start taking effect. But since we do know what we're doing, we're not too worried. There was a monster in the box. Now here you see in a pot we got something called a tincture, which is just basically something that gives us a few magic points. Also have a save point here, which is not a bad place to save after doing almost a half hour's worth of action there. And we're actually coming up upon the first save point in our journey, the actual save that we're going to make. We have another treasure chest back here. Honestly, not a whole lot of big bad stuff here, just a lot of small healing items, potions, tonics, things to recover small bits of magic and health. So I think it's appropriate for the time in the game where we're at. Now this is where you can learn advanced battle concepts such as status ailments, getting a few more tonics, and I don't think there's anything in that pot, but we'll take a quick look. Yeah, nothing in there. Alright, so basically we've done everything we can possibly do here. We don't really want to bother listening to them because, again, I already know how this game is played. I know everything there is to know about it. Pretty close to, anyway. So we're going to leave the school classroom of knowledge, and we're going to start heading out to the open world. And that's just going to about do it for the first section of this game. We are now on the open world. So we're going to go ahead and pause right here. We're going to save it right here. And when we come back, we'll jump into part 2 of Final Fantasy VI. Thanks for watching.